Final Fantasy XIV hot takes. You have them, we react to them. Hello, everybody. It's your boy Jmulls, and without further ado, let's get into this. First up today, we have at Young Ben Kenobi 2876, who says, future expansions shouldn't always have to explore brand new areas, places every time. Give us an expansion that goes back to Eorzea or Arthod and gives us new zones in those areas. Terral also has much more space to explore if we go back in a future expansion too. I definitely agree with this one, and while there's still a lot of different places I would love for us to go to at some point in time, it's like I would love to have actual zones in Ivalice in Final Fantasy XIV. We've talked about quite a bit recently going to Hingashi because, yeah, we've been to Kugani, that's just one city, one small location in a greater country. And I've been talking about since the beginning of Dawntrail, there's a lot of real estate to the north of Terral and also to the south. There's like plenty of places that we could explore there. Heck, even if we just go back to like other places in Eorzea, like exploring the Black Shroud even deeper, it's like that could be really dang cool if the story is good and if it's executed well. That just applies to everything though. But I think this is one of the methods of expanding on the world that is readily available for a lot of MMORPGs that I see, but rarely do I ever see the ones that I play at least go this route. I feel too often these games can feel as if they have to shove some kind of new location in our face instead of just simply expanding on the world and the region. With the way that Final Fantasy XIV tackles its zones, there's plenty of real estate in basically every location that we've been to, or at least most of them. We can easily add a few extra zones there to further a story if you really want to go that route. We only really ever explore very small locations at a time. It's not like Final Fantasy XIV is one giant interconnected open world where you could just fly from like Arthod to Eorzea. The game just doesn't operate like that. You can easily expand on places. Like Garlemald's a great one in my opinion. There's so many places in the Garlemald Empire or former Garlemald Empire at this point that we could just go to and explore and expand on. I don't know if they're going to do that anytime soon, don't get me wrong, but I think it just goes to show just how many different directions this story and this game can take. Next up, we have at JoJo Star 6737, who says, in order to restore class identity, I think they need to bring back some of the older mechanics of some classes and try to build off of them than what we have now, as I feel a lot of the classes lack complexity that classes in other MMOs do. I don't think they should necessarily do this for every job, but one of my favorite examples to talk about lately has been, man dude, I just miss Stormblood Dark Knight so much. I was new to the game, I was really bad at the game, but there was just something about Stormblood Dark Knight that I found so fun and compelling. And I just remember running dungeons back in the day, spamming Dark Arts and Abyssal Drain, and it was just such a good animation. The sound effect just hit. It was so dang good. It's really hard to say just what the scope and scale of the job changes for 8.0 are going to be until we actually get the FanFest and they start to reveal this information, but this is definitely one of the avenues they could pursue to try to change the jobs up a bit more than what they currently are. A lot of the times when it comes to these long-running MMORPGs, you can take a lot of lessons from the past and what worked once upon a time and try to reincorporate that into the modern game. Now, not always will that work because the flow, the pace of the game could just have moved on and changed compared to the type of game the game was when classes behaved like this. But I do think it's worth exploring in some capacity. Heck, a really good example for me would be, like, if we talk about World of Warcraft for a bit, with Retribution Paladin, that used to be one of my mains. But then the Legion expansion rework hit, and I hated the class after that. But later down the line, they made a bunch of changes that were more in line to the playstyle that Retribution Paladin used to have, and I've really liked it ever since. It still plays different, it still flows different, but they clearly took inspiration from how the job, well, in that game class, used to play. I think it'd be very interesting to see what Final Fantasy XIV could do in this regard when it comes to how some of these older jobs used to play. Maybe they could take some mechanics from back then and reincorporate them into the modern day. For me, my big example for this when it comes to Final Fantasy XIV is going to be Dark Knight, because I'm not a fan that it just kind of feels like an edgy warrior, or maybe I should say even more edgy warrior. So whether it gets changed by doing something completely different and out of left field, or saying, okay, let's look back at how this job used to play and see if there's a mechanic or two we could not like bring back and maybe that could spice things up enough. I do think to some degree, people kind of over exaggerate just how much of an issue job design is currently right now. now. I think it is an issue, don't get me wrong, but I also imagine for a lot of people out there, they either just haven't noticed it that much, don't care, or they're just kind of fine. So I say that not because I think jobs are in a good state right now. I say that because I'm not convinced they're going to go like for full reworks or anything when we get to 8.0. I think a lot of the jobs are going to play mostly the same or still feel somewhat reminiscent of what they currently are. I'm not expecting like complete gameplay overhauls for every job across the board or anything like that. I also don't think they need it. A few tweaks and a couple of additions here and there I think can go a very long way if they go about this in a smart way. We'll have to wait and see. Next up on the docket, we have at Ethereal Tonic, who says, I'd love to see more threats that aren't able to be brute forced. Bring back political machinations. They need to throw in some writers that can craft a plot that requires outmaneuvering the foe. Cut the fat with the cast in so far as reducing the amount of options we have for backup in a situation, either by incapacitating select scions or comrades or plopping the Warrior of Light in a new setting where they're uncontactable, which will up the stakes without bringing the power dynamic in it. Same line of thinking as what you said. The story needs nuance, not just another big bad stronger than the last. In saying all of that, I feel like they're gearing up to do just that in the upcoming patch's expansion by way of our heroic actions possibly having negative consequences. Fingers crossed this is the way they go. I would absolutely love to see that. I really miss the days sometimes of the way the story felt in late A Realm Reborn and also throughout Heavensward. I think Final Fantasy XIV storytelling is at its best when it's able to maneuver around having these political machinations, but also that typical Final Fantasy, let's go fight the bad guy, A plot as well. It's like being able to weave these two things together just makes the story so much more compelling to me. I think we did have quite a bit of that back in the days of Shadowbringers with somewhere like Yulmore, right? And I think Yulmore was a fan favorite location because it wasn't just a matter of like defeating Vothri. We had to like convince the people of Yulmore to go a different way. And we really got into the weeds of it. Maybe like not like insanely deeply or anything, but we got into the weeds of it enough to where we understood how the people of Yulmore think and how they operate. I think for me, that's also part of the reason I'm just not that big of a fan of the whole tournament arc that we had at the beginning of Dawntrail with the Rite of Succession with Wu Clement, because it just basically did feel like a tournament arc. It didn't really feel like there was some grand political maneuvering for a country at the scale that Tyrell is, to the degree that we used to have in the story. It was essentially, well, I wouldn't call it a world tour because we didn't explore the world, but we did basically just tour Tyrell and learn a little bit about each of the people that live there. And like, that has some merit, don't get me wrong, but I think there's just so many different ways to execute on this idea, especially the idea of the Rite of Succession, in a far more engaging and interesting way than what they ended up doing. I know Stormblood can be rather controversial. I'm talking the 4.0 story here, but man, dude, I really liked it. I think in a lot of ways it was able to do what I wanted the story of Dawntrail to do for Tyrell. We went to a bunch of different locations, we learned about the peoples there, but at the same time, we learned about the politics of each of the regions and especially how they related to Golemald in a far more interesting and entertaining way for me. If they're able to like go back to their roots in a way and reincorporate these elements into the modern story going forward, especially with somewhere like 8.0 for instance, I would be a big fan of that because I do think it is fair to say that Dawntrail had a little bit of this. I wouldn't call it a lot, but the whole Calyx storyline with the people of Solution 9 in Alexandria started to like go in this direction. It just wasn't particularly deep about it, but I hope they continue to go in this direction because I think that's probably the highlight of the story for me when it comes to Dawntrail. It's just Solution 9, how the people there think, how they feel, what makes them different to everyone else in terms of their worldview and all that, and how they react to the events of the main story going on. But now getting to the other part of this whole like take for this section of the video, I absolutely agree with the idea we need more like political maneuvering in the story because while yeah, what they did with the Sultana back in the early days of Heavensward and just bringing her back, right? Like, was that the most satisfying way to conclude that story? Probably not, but man, when she was poisoned at the end of A Realm Reborn's patches, that entire section of the game just had a feel to it. It was so engaging, so immersive, and so well told, and I would love to feel like that again with the story going forward. So here's where you come in. Leave a comment down below with your own hot takes about the future of Final Fantasy XIV. I want your hottest, I want your spiciest takes with just you versus the entire world, and I may react to them in a future video. And while you're down there, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. And the MMO scene is very, very difficult to get into because Ashes of Creation just exploded. We have a lot to talk about, people. Want to find out more? You should check out this video right here. Stay safe, everybody. Have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again.